Welcome back to Wholesaling Around the World, the Tennessee edition. The Volunteer State, one of my favorite locations to virtually wholesale in. And the reason why is because Tennessee offers us a little bit of everything. With its unique shape, it also gives us unique markets. It has three major metro cities, Memphis, Nashville, Knoxville. And they all offer us a little bit something different. Now, I've always said when people ask me, RJ, what states should I virtually wholesale in? Now, I've been getting asked that question since 2020. And so over the course of time, I've tried to develop the best way to try to explain my experience of doing deals in all 50 states. And how I've always said that is anything west of Texas is going to be harder on acquisitions, but easier on dispositions and normally has a higher assignment fee. Anything east of Texas is going to be a little bit easier on acquisitions, maybe slightly more difficult on dispositions, and on average, a lower assignment fee. Now, that's not the case across the board. It's just kind of a rough rule of thumb. Now, Tennessee offers us a variety of the three different types of markets that I see. You have the low price point. A lot of the as-is comps are very important. They can be rental properties where the majority of your dispo in buyers are going to be landlords. That's what you get inside of Memphis. Memphis being the first major metro that we're going to talk about inside of Tennessee is that it's a great market to wholesale in, but you have to be very aware of your competition that exists on the retail market. Right? Why would an end buyer buy your deal for $25,000 or $30,000 when they can go pick up a similar type property off the MLS for $10,000 or $15,000? That's something you have to be aware of, just like you have to be aware of the same thing in the Kansas Cities, the Detroits, the Birminghams, the Jackson, Mississippis, the St. Louis. This is very common. That is the nature of what Memphis gives you. Cash flow is going to be very important. You have to pay attention that depending upon the type of neighborhood you're in, more often than not, you're going to need a minimum of a 2% rental, and in some locations, a 3% rental. Now, another thing that Tennessee offers us is the largest city and the capital, Nashville. Nashville is one of those markets that is highly competitive. Some people would consider it somewhat saturated. I don't believe in that. Okay, I believe with solid processes, good lead generation, and a solid closing process, and a great company and underwriting process, you can absolutely do deals in Nashville just like we have. However, Nashville is going to be comparable to a location like a Denver, Colorado, or maybe a Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, maybe even a Phoenix, Arizona. Right? It is, it's competitive. You're always going to be dealing with some sort of competitor out there. But if you can acquire a deal in Nashville, dispositions is going to be very easy for you and can be extremely profitable. So I believe out of all of the cities in Tennessee, the city that you can probably make the most money in is Nashville. Now, moving to my favorite city to do deals in Tennessee, on the far east side of the state is Knoxville, Tennessee, home of the University of Tennessee, the Volunteers. I love Knoxville. I also have spent more time in Knoxville than I have anywhere else inside of Tennessee, but that doesn't really matter when it comes to virtual wholesaling. The reason why I like Knoxville is because it's the most average city between the three major metros, right? Nashville being the higher price point, more competition. Memphis going to be the lower price point. A lot of the as-is type properties, lower assignment fees. Knoxville is kind of the cookie cutter, mid-price points. Dispositions is not as easy as Nashville, but it's not as hard as kind of the lower price points in Memphis that you can get into. And acquisitions is easier, in my opinion, than Nashville, but a little bit harder than Memphis. And so I've always loved those types of cities. I've loved the ones where it's like, hey, it's not like, hey, if I go get a distressed property in Memphis, I know I can lock that up. but then it's going to be a struggle on dispo. In Knoxville, it's like, hey, we've got to work a little bit on acquisitions. We've got to work a little bit on dispositions, but overall, we know we can move deals. Now, shout out to Chattanooga, just south of Knoxville. I wouldn't consider Chattanooga a major metro in comparison to Knoxville and Memphis and Nashville, but it's also a great place to do deals. It's also home of our friend over at Easy REI Closings, David Olds. I know he does a ton of deals out there in Chattanooga, has done a ton of deals out there. Chattanooga, a lower volume city for us in Tennessee. But the other thing that Tennessee offers outside of the three major metros is that there are plenty of rural locations that you can still do deals in. Now, the majority of people that teach virtual wholesale and say, hey, you need to stay away from trying to do rural deals. I disagree with that. I think there is low-hanging fruit in the rural markets. And the reason why is because it's not about the location necessarily. It's about the buyer activity. So if you could go to a place like Murfreesboro, which is home of Middle Tennessee State University, there is buyer activity there. But some people would say due to the smaller population and the lack of deals that go on there, that you should stay away and you should just focus on Memphis, Nashville, and Knoxville. I disagree. We have done deals all across the state, and some of the best deals that we've done in Tennessee have been considered quote-unquote rural. So when you are going to buy leads in Tennessee, one of the things that I want you to pay attention to is the amount of buyers that you have there, and then you can also pay attention to their activity. So when you're comping a deal, you can look and see specifically on like Privy, you could go and see, hey, do I see comps that were purchased at $50,000 and then 6 months later sold at $150,000? You can also use any of the disposition softwares like Investor Base, Investor Lift, or Deal Speed to see the amount of buyers that are in the city or the county. Again, my rule of thumb with that is I want a minimum of 2,000 active cash buyers inside of the county. I hope to get that inside the city, but if I don't, I'll still do the deal. If you can have that many buyers, more often than not, you're going to be able to move the deal. Now, Tennessee has a population of 7.228 million people, making it ranked the 15th most populated state in the United States. Now, I bring that up because volume-wise, for us here at Titanium, that's about where Tennessee ranks. So it's never going to be like a top 5 market for us. And maybe some of that is due to the nature of what we do with marketing in all 50 states. I believe that it's just due to sheer volume of the leads that are coming in. And we're also competing against the other wholesalers that are in the major metro areas like Nashville, Memphis, and Knoxville that are exclusively buying all those leads. However, where we get majority of our deals are in those tertiary markets right around the Nashvilles, Memphis, and Knoxvilles, where that's where we crush. Specifically for us, the majority of our volume has been on the east side by Knoxville, but right outside of Knoxville. That is where we have had the most success. Now, that's not saying that you can't have the similar type of success inside of Nashville or Memphis. It's just specifically for us, that's what we've seen. Why? Because that's the best buyer relationships that we have inside the state of Tennessee. So this is specific for us, but that's what this series is for, to give you guys the feedback of what I've experienced inside of each one of these states. So with Tennessee being the 15th most populated state with a population of just north of 7 million people, that's about where we rank. But feeling-wise, conversation, the attitude that I receive from sellers, I love when I see a Tennessee lead come across, because I know that if we can get a deal under contract and we do the appropriate comping and underwriting, we are going to be able to monetize that lead and get it sold despite wherever it really exists inside the state. I think that has a little bit to do with Tennessee's unique shape and also how the major metro areas kind of cross all the way across the state. Memphis being the far west. Like if you've ever driven to Memphis from the west, you literally go across the state line of Arkansas to Tennessee, and right across the river, you're in Memphis. You're in one of the major metro areas. A couple hours later, you're in Nashville. A couple of hours later, you're in Knoxville. So the major highway that runs from west to east across Tennessee is basically going through the major metro areas. And because of that kind of unique geographical layout, I believe that's why we have been able to be successful, despite wherever the lead is located, to be able to move that deal in Tennessee. So, Volunteer State, I love you. I give you great rankings across the board, acquisitions, dispositions, and like I said, anytime we can get a lead inside of Tennessee, I'm excited because I believe we can make money with it. So that's my take on wholesaling inside of the state of Tennessee. For those of you that have done deals inside of Tennessee, let me know what your thoughts are. I love to hear your take and your stories, and I appreciate each and every one of the comments that ever comes across this channel. Show me some love on this. Give me a like, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.